land that we stand on today, the traditional owners past and present, and acknowledge their part in our welcome to this country. I would also like to welcome you all here, especially Mark Dawkins, the Acting Executive Director of the Office of Multicultural Interests. I'd like to apologies from Liz Beja, the MLC. Couldn't be here today because I think Parliament's Sydney. So, on behalf of Professor Farida Fosdar from Mobilities and Belonging Research Initiative, which is really the University of UWA, Vlasta Mitchell, Director of the Fremantle Multicultural Centre, and myself would like to start the ball rolling and hand over to Farida.
Thanks, Michael. I've just got mainly housekeeping stuff to talk about. I did want to, again, thank you all, as Michael has done. This is the third of the Settling in Western Australia workshops that we have held. The other two were held, I think, 2004 and 2007, so there's been a bit of a gap. So we're really pleased to be able to have another one. And we've been really pleased at the level of interest that has been shown, both in terms of people wanting to present and also in terms of our audience. The goal of these workshops is to bring the various sectors involved in migrant settlement together. So the researchers, the academics who do research in this area, the service providers, and government, so policymakers and so on. And we have a really nice mix both in terms of presentations and in terms of the audience today. I have to ask your permission to video today's proceedings. If there's anybody who wouldn't like themselves to be videoed, please let Amy know. Amy is our research assistant who's working on the project today. And this was a request from the Sociological Association of Australia, who are helping to fund this event, and they wanted that to be available to upload onto their YouTube. So please let us know if you're not happy about that. Likewise, if you'd rather not be in any still photos. For the video, if speakers, can you please stand on the spot here so that the video can get both the speaker and the screen. We also, at the end of today's proceedings, Amy and I will be going away and writing up a one-page summary of each of the presentations. We'll then be giving that back, sending that back to the speakers for approval, and then we'll be publishing that in a short sort of 12 or 16 page document, which we will distribute as widely as possible. And that's where the TASA, the Sociological Association of Australia, support will be going to. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge the support from the Sociological Association of Australia, Metropolitan Migrant Resource Centre and the Fremantle Multicultural Centre, the Office of Multicultural Interests, and also the Settlement Council of Australia. Please, speakers, keep to time because we have a very tight program. You'll be given a 5-minute notice before when you've got 5 minutes left. But if you want to leave time for questions, you'll need to include that in the last 5 minutes. So if you see that and you want some time for questions and discussion, apart from the time at the very end of the day, then please finish up close to this. If you get close to the very end of your talk, you'll be getting one of these. And after that, we do have a shepherd's hook and we'll pull it out. Okay, and Vlasta is the chair for the first session.
Hello. It's lovely to see so many familiar faces. People I haven't seen in ages, and just all new faces as well. I'm Vlasta from the Fremantle Multicultural Centre. Our first speaker today, I must say that I was delighted when I first saw the program, so many interesting topics. The only thing I'm worried about is obviously the topics they're going to elicit a lot of interest, and people want to be commenting and asking questions. And I was going to speak to Farida later about maybe having some more sessions further down the track so that we can actually talk about our own experiences in these particular areas. Our first speaker is Megan Levy, is that correct? from the Association of Services to Torture and Trauma Survivors, who will be speaking on the effects of migration and or domestic violence on psychosocial developmental systems. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone. I am actually a little bit nervous, but thank you to Farida and thank you to Michael, and excuse me that I don't know the other names, but thank you for allowing me to present here the findings of a 2-year research, qualitative research, exploring the potential effects of domestic violence and or forced migration on psychosocial developments. This study was initially focused on domestic violence, but the findings can also be transposed to survivors of torture and war trauma. I am Megan Levy and I work for Assets. Excuse me if I will have to read a little bit, but you will understand why, and I will also ask you if there are comments or questions, if we can reserve them for the end, because we really will be constricted. So, today we will be visiting 3 psychosocial developmental models, and they are the nested systems and the personal combo, pyramid of needs and psychosocial stages. But before we get there, let's think, what is domestic violence? Domestic violence is a state of war, sometimes subtle, sometimes evident. Like war and trauma, domestic violence is abuse that can be where the victim has no control, it's unpredictable, it's aggressive, coercive, and happens within an intimate or family relationship. Abuse, both in domestic violence or in torture and trauma, can take one or all of the following. Can be physical, psychological, emotional, sexual, social isolation, bullying, economic, and in the case of domestic violence, infidelity is also a form of domestic violence. All these types of abuse are lived in a daily battle of fear, anger, confusion, shame, sadness, isolation, guilt, grief, despair, doubt, silence, inferiority, and loss of identity. At Assets, we specialize in serving people who have suffered torture or trauma, or war trauma, and we use a recovery model to work with our clients. As we go through it, I will invite you to identify some features of domestic violence in a test. So first of all, we have torture and trauma violence may involve killings, assaults, life threats, threats and harm to family and friends, disappearances, lack of shelter, health and healthcare, death, separation, isolation, dislocation, provision of traditional practices, deprivation of human rights, killings, exposure to boundless human brutality on mass scale, invasion of personal boundaries, no right to privacy, impossible choices, and insults. Any similarity with domestic violence? Then we have, of course, the social and psychological repercussions, and we will have chronic fear and alarm, disruption of connections to family, friends, community, and cultural beliefs, destruction of central values of human existence, humiliation, and degradation. And then again, is there any similarity to domestic violence? We have then the resulting symptoms that will be anxiety, feelings of helplessness, loss of control, relationships change, grief, depression, shattering of previous health assumptions, loss of trust, meaning, identity, and future, and guilt and shame. And finally, we have the recovery goals. But before we get to them, let's approach the psychosocial models to explore the process the client goes through, and the role and importance of agencies and services like yours and like mine. We will begin with the ecological systems. Cannon, Antonucci, and Bronfenbrenner's theories are based on the fact that Persons, we are not isolated beings, and neither are we shaped exclusively by nature or nurture, but we are influenced by our environment. For the purpose of the study, we merge together the personal, combo, and the nested systems. Brenner proposes 4 levels, and it is the macro systems, which are systems on larger scale, the exo level, systems influence the person, micro and meso levels, the mesosystems, closely linked to the person, and the microsystems, which are the very close connections. However, Cannon and Antonucci suggest another level, that is where the person actually resides, and it's shared with partners, children, siblings, parents, and the spirit. When a person is escaping domestic violence or is forced to migrate, the most immediate levels will automatically vanish, leaving him or her in a vacuum of cold and impersonal institutions. These disappeared levels will eventually be replaced by a meta level made of agencies and services like yours and mine, which might fill up some but not all of the psychosocial needs of the person. Maslow's pyramid of needs will help us understand this. Maslow's human motivation theory proposes 5 different levels of needs, which must be satisfied one after the other in order to develop social psychology. I invite you to consider how these nested systems that have disappeared may contribute to the satisfaction of a person's needs, and what will happen to these needs if the person loses partner, family, home, property, familiar surroundings, financial stability, job, and country. Chances are the pyramid of needs will be depleted, significantly impacting the person's psychological and emotional stability. Let's explore this under the light of Erickson's psychosocial model. Erickson proposes 8 stages of human development. Each stage has a crisis to be resolved and an existential question to be answered. Infancy, the crisis is between trust and mistrust, and a positive answer to the question, can I trust the world, will lead into trust. Early childhood, the crisis is between autonomy and shame and doubt. A positive answer to, is it okay to be me, will lead to autonomy. Preschool, the crisis is between initiative and guilt, and the positive answer to, is it okay for me to do, will lead into initiative. School time is, the crisis is between industry and inferiority, and the positive answer to, can I make it in the world of people and things, will lead into industry. Adolescence, the crisis is identity versus role confusion, and the positive answer to who am I and what can I be will lead to finding identity. Young adulthood, the crisis is between intimacy and isolation. And the positive answer to can I love and be loved will lead to intimacy. Middle adulthood, the crisis is between generativity and stagnation. A positive answer to can I make my life count will lead to generativity. This is being productive. Maturity, that is the last stage. The crisis is between ego, identity, and despair, and the positive answer to the question, is it okay to have been me, will lead into ego integrity. However, for the victim of domestic violence or for a survivor of torture and trauma, things can be really very different. The findings of this research have suggested a regression in the psychosocial stages derived from the fragmentation of the nested systems and the depletion of the pyramid needs. Let me give you an example. From my caseload, an Iraqi man who is in his 60s, an elegant, attractive, wealthy, and successful in his country, well-educated, with lots of family, friends, and business relationships, who due to war, torture, prison, and losing absolutely everything, he was forced to relocate in Australia. Normally, he would be in this stage reflecting in life, reflecting about his life and achievements. However, reflecting on lives towards he will be reflecting on life towards ego integration. However, trauma, severe PTSD, and emotional instability, instead of helping ego integration, can potentially cause personality disintegration. Thus, a regression toward early stages in the psychosocial. In our example, the Iraqi man who is 60 will be facing ego integrity and despair, and the task will be to reflect on his life. However, if the reflection is on previous life, this may generate grief and loss. If reflection is on present, it may generate anxiety and depression. If reflection is on the future, it will generate hopelessness and fear. This could put the man in despair and have a regression into the previous stage. That is generativity versus stagnation, where the task is to produce. But if he has no job, nothing to do day after day, no recognition, he is no longer head of family, clan, or tribe, and he's not a provider. He has no recognition of skills, values, qualities, life and professional experience, abilities, education, or factual knowledge. Therefore, his productivity, activity, and generativity will become paralyzed, and this will make him fall into stagnation, regressing into another level. That will be intimacy versus isolation, where the task is to love and be loved. However, if the person might have lost spouse, children, or closest family members, or his marriage and family are threatened by clash of values, morals, and traditions, or his ethical and religious beliefs are questioned by a secular and sexualized environment, or challenged by racism, feminism, consumerism, individualism, in a lack of community and in a lack of belonging, most likely the person will fall into isolation and then regressing one more stage. That is identity versus role confusion. Here, we are supposed to identify our role in life. However, our client might be asking himself, how can I guide and protect? Bring up my children? How can I continue to be a good husband, father, provider? A clash of values, morals, ethics, and traditions will bring about loss of social and family roles. Children will become carers of parents. Parents will become helpless, weak, and ignorant in their children's eyes. Individual-centered payments may generate conflict, division, and role interactions. And so, the client will be in a role confusion, sliding into the prior level, that is industry and inferiority. Here, the question is, can I make it in the world? But how? If he has no skill recognition, if he has no skill recognition, low capacity to concentrate and learn due to PTSD, different written and spoken language, and even then, highly educated, he will become illiterate in our country, putting him in a position of inferiority, and regressing him another level to initiative and guilt, where the question is it okay for me to do? He may ask himself, how can I do this or that? How can I help myself and my family? Were we better in our country? Why did I come to a place where I cannot understand language, culture, or systems? And so he may feel guilty, regressing one more level into the crisis of autonomy and versus shame and doubt. Where the question is it okay to be? But how autonomous can a person be when he is in severe financial hardship, highly dependent on others that are strangers? He has no decision power, no freedom to earn a living, and it's not free to be who or what he is. The person then will, of course, fall into shame and doubt, and regress into one more, into the last stage, trust and mistrust, where the question is, can I trust the world? Let's remember that the person is coming from a destroyed country, destroyed by war, and has lost personal comfort, micro and meso level, his pyramid of needs is depleted, and he is in an unknown environment with new faces, new features, an alien culture and language. So in a world where the person cannot even trust himself or herself, how is he going to trust God? At this point, we find our client, vulnerable and fragile as an infant, with life and identity shattered into pieces. What can we do? Well, we will have to set some recovery goals. Whether victim of domestic violence and/or forced migration, the client goes through a high destructive path, affecting his identity, personality, and life as a whole. In the hope of supporting the reconstruction of lives shattered by violence, assets recovery goals are set to restore safety, enhance control, reduce fear and anxiety, restore attachments and connections for emotional support and care, restore meaning and purpose in life, restore dignity and self-value, and to reduce shame and guilt. In conclusion, the impact of the psychological and emotional developmental systems of a survivor of violence can be devastating, and we as agencies and services will become the lifeline which may help them heal and rebuild their life. It is then our privilege and responsibility to make this the best we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Megan. We've actually probably got more than 1 or 2 questions. We stick them. There's a lot to thank you.
Or I will.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Eduardo Ferrate from the University of Western Australia, who will be speaking on Western Australian Muslim parents' stories from the home front.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the MRC and the sponsors for this opportunity to talk about my research, which is in the final 6 months. There's excitement and stress at the same time, but we'll get there. I'm doing this research with on a PhD with the Centre for Muslim Status Societies and School of Population Health, Population Studies, and it's been going on since 2006. So just to start with, what this research, this presentation is based on the research I've conducted, and it's exploring the experiences of a cohort of Muslim families that have settled in Western Australia. Now, although the research is based in WA, it will look into the wider Australian research that looks into settlement of Muslim families in Australia. And whilst it's acknowledged that certainly the issues that affect and the challenges that Muslim families face. Other families will face those challenges. For Muslims, there's certainly those challenges can be particularly more significant. And this is mainly to do with efforts that Muslim parents put into ensuring that the children do stick to the precepts and the religious precepts that are set down by Islam. And this is a challenge for me. I've got to let you know right now that for me this research is a particular challenge because I am a non-Muslim, I'm a Catholic by birth, and looking into issues affecting Muslim families for me is quite a challenge as well. I had to learn a lot about Islam and about how Muslim families go about their day-to-day. So it was a great learning experience, quite a learning curve. So, and what the research looks into is how settlement affects family dynamics and how they seek assistance. So I'll try in this very short time I've got to let you know a bit about some of the finds I've got. And just to set the scene, I actually got some numbers in terms of the increase in Muslim population across Australia. WA, and I use New South Wales. New South Wales is one of the states with the largest Muslim population. And what this table shows is that there has certainly been comparatively a large growth, a significant growth in the number of Muslim families in this state, which was about 47%. This is between 2006 and 11. That's the last census. Whilst in whole of Australia it was about 12%, and New South Wales. So the growth, actually comparatively again, in the Muslim population in the state has been greater than in the state. And obviously this brought up some of the issues that parents talked about, such as the ability to take their children to Islamic schools and to access Islamic education was certainly difficult for them. The methodology I've used is narrative inquiry, narrative analysis. One well-known researcher that used narrative research, Caroline Risman, and I quote from her work. She says, human agency and imagination determine what gets included and excluded in narrativization, how events are plotted and what they are supposed to mean. Individual construct past events and activities in personal narratives to claim identities and construct lives. So what I did with this, when I interviewed parents is basically, we had a conversation about their stories, about their experiences. It was a bit of storytelling there. Participants for this study, they originate from Africa, from Southeast Asia and Middle East. The preferred age for participants, 18 years of age. Most of all of participants were over the age of 18. But there was certainly, if any participants younger than 18 actually put a hand out to be interviewed, they would be certainly organized. There would be procedures in place to include that. It ensured the inclusion of people recently arrived by the Australia's humanitarian program. They used semi-structured interviews, and I'm using the data analysis software, which helps, which is fairly long sort of transcriptions and a lot of information that is in all the interviews. Now, other research, recent research in this area, this is just four of the studies I'm using. Literature, actually the bibliography is going on 80 and counting, but again, just counting, it's all right. This work by Renshaw, it's based in these states. And he explores cultural values, practices, and behaviors relating to the family dynamics amongst Arabic-speaking migrants. This study, again, from distant states, looks into the Muslim families with emphasis on understanding the problems of marginalization and interfamilial relational issues and problems causing these. This study by Professor Samini Yasmin, coordinating supervisor, and the director of the Center of Muslim States and Societies, Understanding Muslim Identities, and again the study that she undertook together with Al-Qadiri in '98, the gender-based needs assessment of Muslims living in the Perth metropolitan area. Now, this is just some basic statistics of the interviews. Total number of interviews, 34, involving 32 adults, 13 males, 19 females. 6 couples were interviewed jointly, which was fantastic, having couples jointly interviewed. 18 individual interviews, 9 participants arrived as refugees between 2 and 17 years ago. And 4 of them were two of these were interviewed in Catania. We actually interviewed 4 participants in Catania with the help of the local Shire Council. Backgrounds are there. I mean, this is not obviously an exhaustive, so it provides a reasonable, good cross section of countries. And also in terms of qualifications of participants, this is primary education and employment as well, a good mix there.